Welcome to another installment of Steven's Straight Talk. If you are new to this channel or just new to me in general, I am one half of Where's the Remote. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, rate and review, and share with your friends, share on social, follow us on social, and things of that nature. But I am here to react and give my feedback on the season 2 of Fallout. The finale aired last night on Amazon Prime. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit into my insight into my relationship with Fallout previously from the show airing. I believe it was a couple of years ago. Also giving a recap on season 1 in totality, giving a recap on the finale that aired just last night, and then obviously end off with my rating and final score. So we'll start off with my relationship with Fallout. I was familiar with the game. I was never a big gamer as a child, so I was aware that the game existed. Knew very little about the game. Knew it was kind of some sort of post-apocalyptic sort of setting, and kind of was a bit more serious, but then also had its balance with a more comedic and sort of softer sort of tone, matching the sort of aesthetic and elements of like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So that was all I knew going into Fallout when that first season aired. Um, I recall seeing the trailer. I was like, okay, this might be interesting. I love a post-apocalyptic show. And so first season was pretty good. So I'll just jump into the recap for season 1 for those who haven't watched. So set over 200 years after a nuclear apocalypse, Fallout follows 3 distinct paths that eventually collide in the wasteland of Los Angeles. Lucy McLean, a naive and a naive and optimistic vault dweller, leaves her sheltered underground home to rescue her kidnapped father, only to be confronted by the brutal reality of the surface. Along the way, she crosses paths with Maximus, a conflicted squire in the militaristic Brotherhood of Steel, and the Ghoul, a cynical, centuries-old bounty hunter with a mysterious past tied to the pre-war era. As they all hunt for a missing scientist carrying a cold fusion reactor, the key to infinite power, they uncover a massive conspiracy involving Vault Tech and the true origins of the Great War that ended the world. So yeah, like I said, I came into season 1 with some decent expectations, not knowing much about the video game and not knowing how they were going to adapt that to the show. So season 1, I think, did a great job of introducing us to this world, showing us that this isn't going to be your typical post-apocalyptic world. We're seeing all different types of creatures and abnormalities. Then you obviously have, funny enough, kind of similar to like Silo, you have these groups of people, these vault dwellers, who only know of their life living in the vault, being underground and not knowing what the surface world really looks like and what it really has to offer, which is really nothing, if we're really being honest. But I thought season 1 did a really good job, and like I mentioned in that synopsis, they were basically telling the story from multiple angles, and then they all converge at the end at some point. And I thought that was really fantastic as you uncover some of the mystery elements of it as well. So going into season 2, I was pretty excited as to what more we were going to learn about, this new world that been introduced, more of the mystery being uncovered, learning more about these individual characters and how they grow. So I was really excited for season 2. So let's get into that finale recap. The season 2 finale culminates in a violent showdown in New Vegas where Lucy confronts her father Hank, only to have him trigger a memory wipe failsafe that leaves him as an amnesiac and her without answers. The Ghoul finally locates his family's cryptopods, only to find them empty, discovering a clue that points toward a new Enclave stronghold in Colorado. Meanwhile, Robert House reclaims digital control of the city's defenses via the cold fusion technology, just as a splintered Caesars, Legion, and a resurgent NCR prepare for a massive territorial war. The season ends with the core trio splintered but resolved, as the Enclave is revealed to be the true puppet master behind Vault-Tech's endgame. So my thoughts are going to be about the whole entire season as well as the finale. Like I said, coming into season 2, I was a bit excited and was looking forward to see where things were going to kind of go. And to be quite honest, I felt like season two was a bit slow in comparison to season one. I think maybe because with season one, we're being brought into this world. So we're trying to get an understanding of all the different factions and all the different individuals. And here, so is more so of like uncovering the truth. And they did a really like slow process of like uncovering the truth. Obviously, we get to see a lot of the Ghoul's backstory and how he got tied up into all the different factions, whether it's Voltec, the Enclave, all the individuals that he's met in his past, and then that we also see in the present day as well. So I think they spent a lot of time telling those sorts of stories. And then even with Maximus and like his ascension after taking credit for getting that cold fusion, and then him starting to separate from the Brotherhood and how that kind of played out. Like even that happened across a couple episodes, and then we kind of get stuck with his character to a certain extent in terms of where his story moves forward with. And then Lucy, obviously her father technically kidnaps her, tries to convince her to, see things in the facet that he's seeing things. She's obviously being reluctant. And even that storyline kind of dragged the entire season between their back and forth. And then the obviously, as I mentioned, how essentially their dynamic ends with him wiping his mind and her not getting sort of any answers. I think what they were trying to do was trying to create this real emotional moment with Lucy and Hank, and how she basically knows that she's being lied to this whole entire time in her life, and that nothing that she essentially learned has been the truth, as she's been exposed to the surface world and knowing about the different factions, know about all the abnormalities, the mutants, all these creatures that are out there that are very dangerous. And then her father essentially has been grooming her and telling her a lie this time. And I think with that season finale, they were aiming to have like this really big emotional sort of impact on the viewer. And maybe it's just me, but I didn't necessarily feel that in the moment. And I kind of felt like, it's TV. You try to dramatize things. You want those, shocking moments, those moments of not necessarily despair, but those moments of like, what the fuck? And I never really felt it in that time. It was kind of like you kind of knew your father wasn't who he said he was. We've had like these sorts of like slight hints of like, hey, she's a different individual from when we first meet her living inside the vault, understanding the sort of I guess programming living in the vault, to now she's had these experiences on the surface world, like things should be different for her and how she processes things. But I still feel like in the season finale, she was kind of reluctant to emotionally let go of her dynamics with her dad and like really uncover the truth, which is why he was able to put in that fail safe and wipe his mind and move on, when she had the whole entire time to like really ask questions and things of that nature. And then same thing with like Maximus in terms of primarily see him with his issues with the Brotherhood. Eventually he leaves, meets up with the Ghoul, and then that leads to them going to New Vegas, and he spends basically the last few episodes inside the tech suit and basically fighting off, I forget the name of those creatures, but fighting off those creatures. Kind of find it slightly frustrating of how much he was struggling to fight off those creatures. That being said, he was a squire. He only recently got used to being inside of the tech suit, so I kind of get it. But, it was this sort of sense of like, we need to see him struggle. We need to believe that he might actually perish trying to fight off those creatures. And it was kind of like, I know they weren't going to kill the character off, so really didn't have that thing. But again, back to my comment about like the emotional impact on the viewer, we also see that scene of the people who do reside in New Vegas, like placing bets on whether he's going to live, survive, and then you have that one black gentleman. I forget the actor's name, but he's also on The Bear, so shout out to him. But we see him trying to convince the general public, like, hey, we actually need to support him and not let him die. And they're kind of like, nah, we're not worried about that or whatever. Obviously, he gets saved once he leaves the suit, and then New California Republic come in and kill off the monsters, which I won't consider it a plot hole, but I found it very weird how essentially the Ghoul got Maximus to, kill off or distract these monsters so that he can get inside of the building. And yet it was just that one, but then post post the Ghoul getting inside the building, we constantly keep seeing these monsters pop up, and it's kind of like, if there was so many of them there to begin with, why not showcase that this should have been a way more difficult sort of task? Like, it felt very easy that he was able to distract these 1 to 2 monsters, and the Ghoul was able to get into um, the building so easily. But I get it, we have to, for the storytelling purposes, like the Ghoul needs to get to Mr. House and like put the cold fusion in there or whatever. And then other than that, the house situation, the Robert House situation, and him essentially being reactivated and having now access to all his technology and things of that nature. Found it interesting that we spent this whole entire time with the Ghoul essentially getting the cold fusion so he could reactivate Mr. House, so that way he could find his family, and then upon him leaving, Mr. House, I guess, was hiding his identity, and showcases that the signal is lost when Maximus and Lucy actually entered the office that he was in. And so I would assume that we will see more of Mr. House in the future, or that he will start to play his hand and start in terms of like positioning things to happen and transpire in future seasons. But we shall see. And then obviously the series and well, the show ends with, you know, now they are on this new frontier with the Legion is about to try to take over New Vegas. We have the new California Republic's arrival. So obviously we assume season 3, we're going to see some bit of war, possibly a lot of war, which means a lot of dead bodies. Then we also see the Ghoul, after going to the chamber in New Vegas, knows that his family isn't there, but it looks like his wife left him a card that actually were in Colorado. And so he is now going to move forward and go on to Colorado. I think honestly, the Ghoul is probably the more interesting character in the series, but I hope we do spend a lot of time with him in his travels to Colorado and see what other things that he has to deal with, people, creatures, things of that nature. And then I think this was the post-credit scene, but we then see the leader of the Brotherhood and essentially saying that, he was trying to unify the different factions, and now it's not about unifying, it's about destroying anything that gets into his way. And so we see that he gets plans for their new advanced tech suits. So we would assume these suits are more capable of destruction and being more powerful and things of that nature. And then that's pretty much it. I mean, like I said, I just didn't feel like this was the best season. I think it's definitely levels below season 1. I think from a rating standpoint, I give it like a 3 out of 5. I don't think it was bad, but I also didn't think it was necessarily as compelling, especially with a lot of the time jumps and flashbacks that we're seeing, and then them trying to tell multiple stories that are trying to be tied together. And I think they successfully did it, but I also didn't feel like it was as compelling as season 1. So I think it was a solid season nonetheless, but I don't think it was as great as season 1. And it'll be interesting to see if they do get renewed for season 3. I don't know if that's already been announced, not too sure. But knowing how much money is probably being spent to produce this show. I mean, yes, Amazon makes a shit ton of money, but we now live in the streaming era. If your show doesn't necessarily become a cultural phenomenon or generate big numbers, they're quick to cancel anything. So it'll be interesting to see how whether the numbers actually confirm whether they need to continue on with the show or kind of move on from there. Again, I would assume the production budget is pretty crazy, and I haven't really necessarily seen people talk about Fallout as much. And even with like the friend group that I have with discussing TV shows, they kind of share the same sentiments of like Fallout this season hasn't necessarily been as good as the previous season. But we'll see. It's early. Season 2 just ended. And so we'll see if they're able to get back to their quote unquote glory, or if, the numbers dictate whether we'll see these characters ever again. But that's all that I have for my recap. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I just also recently recapped and reacted to the first season of Wonder Man. But yeah, if you appreciate everything that I've shared this far, or want to just hear my opinion on other TV shows that myself and my co-host is watching, make sure to tap into Where's the Remote show. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and catch y'all next time.